The idea is that we don't store protein like we do carbohydrates or fat. So that means if I have a huge steak dinner, or I come down to Austin, I share some barbecue with you guys Friday night, Saturday morning, that does nothing for me in terms of muscle. That protein is gone.
From On It, this is Total Human Optimization, a show about inspiring peak performance through a combination of unique experts and actionable information. On this episode, we're joined by Chris Mohr to talk about the rules of practical nutrition. So let's jump right into it. So one of the first things you mentioned in your article was only eat when it's time to eat. So most people just, when they feel an urge to have something, they go straight to the kitchen, or in some bad cases, they go straight to a fast food restaurant drive-through, and they get something to satisfy what they think is hunger. So let's talk a little bit about finding the right times to eat.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a great question. Certainly a hot topic. I know growing up in the just interested in fitness myself, and I know both of you are the same way. Reading fitness magazines, the idea and the recommendation was always to eat frequently, small, frequent meals. You had to do it if you're trying to build muscle and lose fat. And really, that makes perfect sense theoretically. And to be honest, I was so interested in that topic that was my Ph.D. dissertation. Now, I certainly won't take you through that because we'd be here for a while. But really, when we're looking at losing fat, the idea of how frequently you should eat doesn't seem to matter as much as how much you're eating. And now, unfortunately, there's food available 24 hours a day, whether it's fast food or vending machines or what have you. So my idea with this recommendation is eat only at kind of traditional meal times. Now, there's no certain time of day per se, but the idea is then between meals, get rid of that mindless eating, because those calories add up really quickly. And the average person takes in about a quarter of their calories from snacks right now alone. So that being said, if we could simply drastically reduce those, and I gave some recommendations in the article, we'd lose a significant amount of calories and ultimately body fat.
Yeah, Chris, could you go back to that idea about the frequent eating a little bit more? I mean, that really was a major paradigm in our industry for a long time. People thought you had to have 5 meals a day, as much as that, and that it would speed your metabolism. As far as I know, that's been completely debunked. Can you explain that more?
Yeah, it has, absolutely. And again, theoretically, without looking at kind of from the science, it makes sense because when we eat, our metabolism increases to digest and utilize those the nutrients. So therefore, if I eat more frequently, the idea is my metabolism would be increased, assuming it's the same number of calories. However, as I mentioned, there's actually research now, because for a long time there wasn't any, and the idea came from bodybuilding. Where those guys were eating 6 to 8, 10 times a day, and therefore they are lean and muscular. So therefore, to be lean and muscular, I have to do that. But there's actually been a handful of studies now to show, and actually comparing head to head, when I eat 6 meals a day versus 3 meals a day, if the calories are the same, there's no difference in overall body fat changes. The metabolism increases, the small metabolism increases you get from eating don't necessarily outweigh the amount you'd be eating when you eat more frequently.
Yeah, it just goes to show that there are a lot of things that bodybuilders do that you and I don't necessarily want to do for ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And again, if that structure of eating does work for you, meaning it doesn't have to be 3 meals a day. It doesn't have to be 4 or 5. For me, for a lot of my clients, sometimes 4 meals works, like traditional breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And sometimes between lunch and dinner, there's a pretty big gap of time. And I've talked to people, they eat lunch at traditional noon, let's say, and then they're not eating dinner until 8 o'clock at night. Well, there's a time in there where maybe a smart snack would be a wise idea. But other than that, with so much food around, it's so easy to overeat and do that mindless eating. Those calories come in way too quick.
Okay, so you mentioned, a great snack. Many people don't really understand what exactly is a good snack. Some people reach for the chip bag or a muffin or something like that. What do you recommend as a quality snack for somebody that's trying to follow your plan?
Yeah, well, what I talk about when I think about eating and snacking in general is there's a few different pieces to a smart snack. One is it should include protein. Two, it should include fiber. And three, bonus, it should include some fat. So protein, fiber, and or fat. If we can get all three in a snack, great. So what does that look like in terms of food? Nuts fit that exactly. They have all three of those ingredients. Maybe a piece of fruit with some like apple and peanut butter, or a banana and peanut butter, or an apple and a piece of cheese. Something like that would be great to have, again, fat, protein, and fiber, because that gives you that kind of longer, consistent energy. The protein certainly helps rebuild and repair muscle. So those are the three ingredients I want to look for when I'm thinking about what is a smart snack. Greek yogurt's another one that works really well and is convenient and easy.
Okay, so you mentioned protein in there a couple of times, and in the article you also mentioned to start your each day with protein. Why is it so important to start the day with protein?
Right. Well, this is one of the hottest areas in nutrition research right now, and it's kind of the idea of how much protein we should eat has shifted. That's certainly important, but it's shifted now more to look at when we eat our protein, because I'll try to kind of summarizing it quickly. The idea is that we don't store protein like we do carbohydrates or fat. So that means if I have a huge steak dinner, or I come down to Austin, I share some barbecue with you guys Friday night, Saturday morning, that does nothing for me in terms of muscle. That protein is gone. I use what I need and excrete the rest. So the frequency of protein is important because I'm trying to build and trying to maintain muscle. And you need that protein consistently throughout the day to do that. Now, the problem is most people don't eat really any or very, very little protein in the morning. So for that first meal of the day, protein intake is only about 10% of our overall intake throughout the day. The rest is usually in the evening and a little bit at lunch. If we can shift that intake to more equal, consistent amounts throughout the day at the three meals, and then if you have a snack in there as well, that would be more beneficial for your body in terms of building and maintaining muscle. And then the other huge benefit of protein when you eat it in the morning is it helps fill you up. So you may eat less throughout the rest of the day.
Okay, that begs the question then, how should we be structuring our meals? You talked about how to build the perfect snack. Now, how do we do our breakfast, lunch, and dinner in terms of protein, carbs, fat? How do you like to portion those out?
Yeah, certainly. Similarly, I hate to count calories. So I'm not going to say you need X number of grams of this or X number of calories at each meal. I tell people to try to keep it simple. And what I mean by that is use your hands to portion foods out, because our hands are with us all the time. We can estimate how much we're eating. So kind of breaking up a plate, I kind of generally imagine a peace sign. I think about protein as a palm full of protein per meal. And that's relative to your body and your size of your hands. So if you're with someone with larger hands, you can't steal their hands for your portions. But it gives you about, depending on the size of your hands, about 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal, approximately, if we're thinking about animal protein. And towards that upper end of that 30 grams seems to be where we can maximize that we get the most benefit from protein, whereas eating more than that doesn't seem to give us added benefit. So start with that protein. And then I like to think about vegetables. So let's fill up the protein, and vegetables should kind of be the base of your plate, so to speak. So filling up almost half that plate with some kind of vegetable, whether it's salad or green beans or whatever your favorite vegetable might be, or vegetables. And then there's a role for some grains, some carbohydrate as well. Again, this is about maybe a handful or two handfuls, depending on how hungry you might be. But typically for meals, about two handfuls. So that could be something like maybe a potato or a sweet potato, some pasta, some rice, something along those lines. So again, the idea is just to estimate how much that plate, using your hands, how much that plate should provide. Because again, it's not about counting calories and measuring macros. Sure, that can work, but using your hands, to me, is much more simple approach than trying to count every last gram of food that goes in your body.
Okay, so conventional wisdom and, old school bodybuilding philosophy would say that if you're trying to build more muscle, you need to eat more protein. So if somebody's training harder and, pushing a lot more weight during the day to try to gain muscle, do they need to go further than that handful of protein?
Yeah, great question. There's a researcher actually kind of down in your neck of the woods. Dr. Doug Patton Jones is one of the leading protein researchers in the world, and asked this very question of kind of the idea of if some protein is good, well then obviously more is better. And they didn't phrase the research question like that, but that was the concept. What they do is they gave people two different amounts of protein through hamburgers. The one group received 30 grams of protein through a hamburger patty. That's right around 5 ounces or so, 4 to 5 ounces of hamburger meat. The other group received 90 grams of protein. So 30 grams versus 90 grams. And what they found was they both had a significant increase in what's called protein synthesis, essentially building muscle. But that increase was not any different between the two groups. It was about a 46% increase above no protein at all, whether they ate 30 grams or they ate 90 grams. So going above and beyond that 30 didn't seem, well, there's no added benefit to that. So to answer your question, what I tell people who are trying to really build muscle, they don't need much more than that per meal because you won't really get a benefit from that muscle wise. What I would suggest is maybe make that snack a little bit larger and focus more on protein then. So you get that even another dose or meal of around that 20 to 30 grams of protein above and beyond just the traditional kind of breakfast, lunch, dinner.
Can you settle the debate for us once and for all about how many grams of protein somebody should have in a day, per pound of their body weight? I know you said you prefer to go by the handfuls. You're not super anal about macros, but some guys are saying, a gram per pound a day or sometimes more than that if you're dieting. What do you think is the optimal number?
Yeah, so the question is, it's not bad for you if you eat more protein than that. Protein won't harm your kidneys or anything else. That's a lot of the myths that are out there. The challenge actually is that when you eat more protein, protein helps fill you up. So you might be kind of displacing other foods in your diet because you're full. So do you need 1 gram per pound of body weight? No, you don't. Is it going to hurt you? No, as long as it's not displacing some of the other foods you're eating, as long as you're not eating that protein in place of fruits and vegetables and some other quality foods. So again, for most guys, that 1 gram per pound is more than they need. I would go a little bit less than that, kind of in that, if you want to give a gram number, probably 1.2, 1.6 grams per kilogram. Now, again, people wonder what a kilogram is. It's 1 pound divided by 2.2. So, multiplied by 2.2. So that's kind of how much protein you should be eating per day.
So that's for not using the metric system. That's like between 0.7 and 1 gram then per pound.
It's a little less than that, but again, I'm fine if you eat 1 gram per pound of body weight. It's not going to hurt you as long as it's not displacing other foods or nutrients.
Cool. Let's talk about eating on the go, because it's that the handful example is great if you're cooking at home or you're at a buffet or something. But if you're just running by Walmart, the pre-made food section on your way home from work, what do you recommend looking for there?
Yeah, this is honestly probably the most practical question in terms of what are real life people doing. One thing I say, almost every single store in the world, from Walmart to Whole Foods and everything in between, now has done for you rotisserie chickens. So I always say, definitely pick up one of those, have one of those on hand, because you can build off of that and make so many meals. So something as simple as picking up a rotisserie chicken, getting a bag of frozen veggies that you can microwave. They have the ones now that you put the bag in the microwave for, I think, 90 seconds. And then you can even buy the 90-second packets of rice, and you have a meal in literally a minute and a half. So to me, those are super convenient and really easy to have on hand all the time. So I suggest those for a lot of people. To be honest, there's some frozen meals out there, and people often give me slack for recommending those. I always say, it's not perfect, so to speak. You're not grilling a beautiful piece of wild king salmon from Alaska and whatever other fresh veggies, but I'd rather have something on hand that's quality than going to fast food or going to ordering pizza or whatever it may be.
Can you name what some of those brand names are, just so we know to look
Yeah,
for?
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorites, Stouffer's makes one. Actually, it's called Stouffer's Fit Kitchen. Fit Kitchen actually has every single meal has at least 25 grams of protein. And then I think it's upwards of maybe 30, kind of on the maximum size. So 25 to 30 grams of protein in a frozen meal. So I look for those. They have those. I've seen them in Kroger. I've seen them in Walmart. I've seen them in Target. So that's always a great one to have on hand. And it's built for kind of targeting that guy who's interested in a little bit higher protein, certainly, but that also get some great flavor. To be honest, I've been really impressed with all of them. I keep them on hand just for that very reason of that. What's quick, easy, in case there's no time to prep a meal.
On the contrary to quick and easy, in the article you mentioned as one of the rules to eat slow and to try to take 15 minutes a meal. What's your basis behind that? Why does that help you out?
Right. Well, I've to be honest, the reason for this is because when we eat slowly, it helps tell us that we're full. It takes about 15 minutes for your brain to even signal that you're full, that you've eaten anything. Now, we have two kids, so we've often find ourselves pretty much inhaling our food and trying to tend to them, and we realize how quickly you eat when you're distracted, whether it's kids or phones or TVs, and when you get distracted, you eat more. So slow down. Take your time to actually put your fork down between bites. Actually enjoy the food, which is a novel approach. But usually we're such an on-the-go society, we're trying to inhale food as quickly as we can while tending to everything else. And then nothing gets done well, and you typically overeat as well.
That's awesome. Now, let's say we got a guy who's doing everything right. He's trying to stay on track with this diet you prescribed, but he gets a whiff of something tasty and he just has crazy cravings like you wouldn't believe. What are your tips for combating that in the moment?
Yeah, so one of the things is always try to have something on hand for some kind of snack, for example. Of whether it's, I was recently I was in an office down in Dallas, and they brought in lunch, and it smelled fantastic. There was a few of us in a meeting in the next room. None of us were hungry because we had just eaten, but this food, and they had cookies. It smelled amazing, and we all kind of commented on it because it smelled so great, even though none of us were hungry. So something like that is maybe one, have something available if you can, whether it's a snack, if you actually are physiologically hungry, maybe keeping some nuts, keeping some fruit, keeping something around, or maybe trying to get up and get away from the particular situation, the environment, maybe going out for a walk or something along those lines. And then, to be honest, the other piece is, I think as you probably gathered, I'm not kind of I try not to have tons of rules around nutrition. There's going to be times that you're probably going to, quote, give in to those cravings. The key is, making sure once you do that, okay, get back on track the next day. One meal is never going to make or break you. So kind of thinking about, you go off the tracks, great, get right back on the track, and that meal won't completely derail you.
So there was this Virginia Tech researcher. Her name is Brenda Davy, and she did this amazing experiment on this amazing liquid that was thought to curb appetite. Can you tell us about that liquid?
Oh, that liquid, it is unbelievable. It's pretty much liquid gold. So what you have to do to get your hands on this liquid, listen carefully. You walk over to your sink and you turn on the faucet. Now, hopefully you're taking notes here. So after you turn on the faucet, you actually just fill up your glass. And this research that you mentioned from Brenda, they filled up their glass. They put about 2 cups of water before each meal. So research participants drank about 2 cups of water before each meal. So traditional 3 meals. And what they found was those people who drank that liquid gold, otherwise known as water, lost about 5 pounds more than the people who didn't drink the water. And this was over 12 weeks. So you might think, oh, great, 5 pounds, no big deal. Well, 5 pounds over 12 weeks is significant in my mind when you're looking at how we go into simple tricks to change our body. You're drinking a glass of water before meals, and that's it. If that's the only change that can make a big difference in your body, to me, that's huge and really, really a simple approach. And as you probably can imagine, what the researchers thought, what's magical about this water? Well, it may fill you up a little bit, so you may overall you may take in less calories. So again, even if it doesn't work for weight loss, hydration is certainly a good thing, but definitely take that one to heart.
So let's say you have a big cheat day, you splurge and you come back the next day and you weigh yourself and you're suddenly up 5 pounds on the scale. Is that water weight, or could you possibly have done that much damage in one day of cheating and gained a lot of fat? And what is then your strategy for coming back down from that? Do you just get back on the diet, or is there something you can do to deplete yourself and get back on track quicker?
Yeah, great question. This is one of the challenges with actually using scale. So they're good and bad in this sense. Can you actually physically gain 5 pounds of pure fat in one day? No. So I don't love the whole 3,500 calories equals a pound. It's not exactly precise, but it's a general idea. But using that model, 5 times 3,500 is a lot. Like what, 17,000 something hundred calories. So physiologically, it's not quite possible. It's water. Certainly our bodies are amazing, and they can retain some water that quickly. So just like you can lose that quickly and people get all excited, you're not losing pure fat without anything else. So it's more water weight than anything. If that actually happened, just kind of like you did, like you said, just maybe it's a huge event you had, a huge holiday, you ate way too much, you don't feel so great. The scale might be a little heavier the next day. Get right back on track, and I'm assuming your body will normalize itself again.
Okay, so to wrap this up, in the article, you said one of the easiest ways to make sure you're on track is to eat boring. Now, if you want to have an enjoyment of life, there's going to be those situations that you really kind of want to enjoy yourself, right? So if you're out, if there's always something available, but if there's nothing available for you and you're at a baseball stadium or a concert or something like that and you need to eat, you didn't bring anything with you, what are some ways that you can enjoy a little bit but not totally wreck your progress?
So again, as I mentioned earlier, I think it's important to remember that one meal isn't going to make or break you. The idea of eating boring isn't necessarily that we have to live like bodybuilders where it's the grilled chicken out of a Tupperware and steamed broccoli, and that's all we eat. The idea is to decrease your variety, because the more variety we have, the more likely we're going to overeat calories. So again, if you want to go out with friends, obviously that's probably going to happen. Your friends, your spouse, have some drinks, whatever it may be, fantastic. One rule I have when we think about eating, when you're going out or when you're, having desserts and drinks, make sure they are with friends. So it's not something that you're doing on a nightly basis all alone, because that's when things start to add up a little bit more too quickly. But really, there's not one great quote unquote cheat food or cheat meal I'd recommend or not recommend. Again, it's in the grand scheme of things, the one food or one ingredient or one meal will never make or break you.
Thanks for listening. Make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes to get the latest episodes they release and to visit us at onnit.com. That's ONNIT.com for the latest in functional foods, equipment, and supplementation. This episode was co-hosted by Sean Heisen. I'm Orlando Rios, and you've been listening to Total Human Optimization.